Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Kishi, and this is Producer Tip Tuesday, where we discuss overlooked topics on how to be a better producer. Before we get into the video, if you guys have any ideas, suggestions, or questions related to these videos and topics you might want me to discuss in future episodes, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Well, without further ado, hope you guys enjoy. Today's topic is why it's important to listen, how to go about using active listening as an exercise to improve as a musician, and why it's important. In this discussion, I'll be talking about active listening. There's a difference between active listening and passive listening. Active listening is where you're just focused on the music and you're not doing anything else. Passive listening would be when you're listening to music and you're doing homework or studying or doing the dishes, doing something other than just focusing on the music. Both have their place, and obviously a lot of us like to listen to music while we're doing things, walking around, walking to school, driving, all sorts of different activities. But when we're doing those things, it's really hard for us to actually focus on the music itself during the process. So the focus today will be on active listening, because I think it's where you get the most bang for your buck in terms of the time you spend doing the listening and what you can get out of it. Some ways that you can put it into action, aside from just sitting down, doing nothing and listening to music. I think one of the things that I find myself doing all the time is picking apart different elements in the music actively and taking note of them while I'm listening. So I'm trying to pick apart how many vocal layers are there, guitar, piano, how are the different harmonic elements interacting with each other, how are the rhythms interacting with each other, taking note of when certain instruments drop in and out. That's a really common thing to notice that you wouldn't necessarily pick up on if you weren't doing active listening. And along with that, you can kind of pick up on production techniques. And I think that's really where we as producers would get the most information and influence and inspiration, is by taking note of, oh, like it sounds like they did a reverb swell right before the transition, or they added another layer of vocals, doubled the main vocal layer during the chorus, or during the chorus it sounds like the whole mix got more stereo width to it. So picking up on those things is important, because especially if we're thinking about mixing and production, they can very easily be boiled down to just technical skills, but really we want to think of them as creative skills, and there's no right or wrong answer. So listening to music that you enjoy and picking up on those things is a really good practice for actually understanding, okay, what do I like to hear, as opposed to just reading a manual on how to mix, how to apply stereo width to your music. Well, who knows if that's the actual direction you want to go, because the book can't, or the blog post that you're reading can't predict what tastes you have. It's just trying to give you a generic, like, this is kind of a normal way of mixing. So I think those things are really important as producers. Other things you can do while active listening is you can take notes on the emotions and how you feel about each little section of the music. If there's particular lyrics that pop out to you, you could also write those down in a little notepad. I think that taking notes while listening to music is something I want to work on more, and I've done it in the past, and it really makes it much more engaging as a process of listening and trying to pull out, what is this music telling me on multiple levels, emotionally, as a musician, like kind of technically, as a producer, how does the soundscape that it's providing, like kind of, where does it take me? You can also, if you want to get extra technical in terms of the music itself, you could also go and write out, in rough notation, count the rhythms of the drum beat or the rhythm section parts and notate them in rough kind of manuscript. But just listening and counting along with it and kind of taking note of where the accents are. I think I tend to do that a lot with funk music, where the accents can be really particular with 16th note accents. It's nice to pick up on that and actually actively try to think about it, as opposed to just like nodding your head to it and being like, oh, that's funky. Actually digging into what rhythms are they actually playing is a really helpful process. It's totally cool to just zone out and not do anything, not be on your phone, not be playing video games or anything. But if you want to really get as much mileage as you can out of it, I think that, occasionally at least, you should try to sit down and write notes out about how you're feeling about the music, because you never know what's just sitting under the surface. And if you're not really making an effort to pull back the layers of the music, some things might go unnoticed. So why should we do active listening as a process to become as a method to become better as a producer? I think the easiest thing is that listening is much more effortless compared to making music. So in order to maintain, as a whether you're an amateur or a professional in music, to maintain the level of enjoyment and inspiration that you need to just continue to play music and make music and compose and write, is it's really important for you to listen to new music and expand your horizons, and also go back to your favorites and kind of dig deeper into them. Because as music makers, at the end of the day, we're really just music fans. And in order to continue to stoke that fire, we need to keep adding some fuel on it. So I think of listening as a process to kind of fan the flames, whether that's thinking of inspiration or motivation or just creative ideas. Those things all can come out of the process of listening. When I think of that, I kind of picture like my creativity as some machine that has like an input and an output. So the input is all the things that, not just music, but everything in my life that's I've experienced is part of it. But really, listening to music, I think, is a big part of it, because that's what, when I listen to music that I love, it makes me wish I could make that kind of music. And if you're lacking that part of it, but you're trying to keep up a steady output of making music, then it's going to be very difficult for you to, I think, maintain the inspiration and the motivation required to really complete projects and keep going with a good attitude of making music. And it's a fun way to do it, honestly. Like it's giving you the nutrients that you need, so that way you can make music, and you can digest all these amazing ideas from all these amazing musicians throughout time. Like we have access to all kinds of recordings throughout the history of recorded music and the history of written music. We can go back and listen to all these great ideas, all these fantastic composers and musicians. And I think as musicians, it's impossible for us to progress if we're not continuously kind of dipping into that. I also think that there's an interesting notion of particularly listening to music that challenges your tastes. So if you say don't really like country music, maybe you just haven't listened to the right kind of country music, or maybe you haven't listened to it in the right way. So the act of going and seeking out music that you've previously written off and trying to break it down more and figure out what you might enjoy about it, or within that genre or style, looking for other artists or other musicians who might interest you more, is a good way to expand your idea of what music can be in the first place. Because when I sit down and I make a beat, I'm thinking in terms of just what is the bare minimum required to make like a hip hop beat or a house beat or a soul R&B instrumental. And if I'm always thinking from that perspective, then I'm obviously going to be discounting a whole range of things. There's tons of music that's just a guitarist and a vocalist, or a cappella. There's tons of music where nobody says anything and it's a large ensemble of musicians. There's no one way to make music. So by seeking out music that challenges your tastes, I think you get to change your perspective on how to make music in the first place and what good music can look like, or sound like, I should say. The more music you listen to, the more you realize how many ways of making music there are. And there's not just one path to making a great song. There's so many paths that they haven't all been discovered yet. And you're here as a musician, as a music maker, to help us all hear more interesting music, because you're trying to expand the horizons of what is possible in music. And I think if there's any one single like noble cause for like being a musician in like a community, it's to contribute to the whole group and how to push all of us forward by being a diligent music maker, making a lot of music, pushing yourself to the limit in terms of creativity and imagination, all these things. Something I've noticed with myself is the moments where I find myself getting really burnt out. When I feel really burnt out making music, it's usually comes down to the fact that I haven't been listening to enough music. I haven't been listening to enough music with the right mindset and with the right approach to allow me to really absorb it and be inspired, be motivated, learn new things, come up with new ideas, think about new techniques, kind of things that you can pull out of that process that I can use later on to make my own music better. Active listening allows you to just dive deeper into music, get more out of the process of listening, and in the end, it's another way, another tool, a very important one at that, to become a better musician. Not just a better producer, but a better musician. And ultimately, I think any activity where I think doing it will get me a better perspective on what music can be and how I can see music in a new light will always be worth it. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.